Edward Miller was known as the king of real estate. At 40, he commanded a construction empire that spanned the entire country. That morning, as always, he rushed out of his Greenwich-on-Connecticut mansion after a quick kiss on the forehead of his 7-year-old daughter, Sophia. The little girl looked at him with those brown eyes, identical to her mother's, who had passed away 3 years ago from an aggressive cancer. "Daddy will be back soon, Princess," Edward promised. As the housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, adjusted the girl's school uniform, Claire, his current wife, appeared at the top of the marble staircase, stunning in her silk robe. At 32, the former model had entered Edward's life just 8 months after his first wife's death. The wedding happened quickly, to everyone's surprise. "Don't forget the dinner with the investors tonight, darling," she reminded him with her perfect smile, descending the stairs to kiss him. Edward nodded, grabbed his Italian leather briefcase, and got into the Range Rover driven by his private chauffeur. What no one knew was that behind that flawless smile and expensive jewelry, Claire hid a dark secret. As she waved goodbye to her husband, her thoughts were elsewhere. Another day of having to put up with this annoying brat. If it weren't for all this money, I would have found a way to get rid of her by now. Her smile vanished the instant the car left the mansion's gates. Edward was on his way to a crucial meeting when he realized he had forgotten his cell phone. On that device was vital information to close the multi-million-dollar deal he had been planning for months. "Roger, we need to go back," he ordered the driver. "I forgot my phone, and I can't do this meeting without it." The driver made a U-turn immediately. Edward checked his watch. There was still enough time to grab the phone and get to his appointment without major delays. What he couldn't imagine was that this simple act of forgetting would change his life forever. As he quietly entered through the side door of the mansion, Edward heard voices coming from the living room. He immediately recognized Claire's cold tone, so different from the one she used when he was around. Something in his wife's timbre made him stop before announcing his presence. "Sophia, how many times do I have to tell you, don't touch my things? This lipstick costs more than all of your toys combined." Claire's voice was as sharp as a razor. "I'm sorry, Aunt Claire. I just wanted to be pretty like you." Sophia's small voice trembled, and Edward felt his heart clench. "First of all, I am not your aunt. I am your stepmother, do you understand? And second, you will never be like me. Look at you, with that dull hair just like your dead mother's." Edward felt his blood run cold. He stood paralyzed behind the slightly ajar door, unable to process what he had just heard. "But Daddy said my hair is pretty," Sophia mumbled through sobs. "Your father says a lot of things. He just feels sorry for you, you know? A burden left behind when your mother died." Claire's laugh echoed through the room. "If it weren't for you, I would have already convinced your father to move to Paris. But no, we have to stay in this country because of your school. Your doctors." Edward felt a wave of nausea rise in his throat. How could he have been so blind? How had he not noticed the monster he had brought into his home near his daughter? "You know what else annoys me about you, Sophia? Your little poor me routine. Daddy, I miss Mommy. Daddy, tell me a story. Pathetic. Your mother is dead and she's not coming back. The sooner you understand that, the better for all of us." Tears streamed silently down Edward's face. His mind was a whirlwind of memories. Claire always making excuses not to be alone with Sophia. The girl becoming quieter and more withdrawn in recent months. The nightmares that had returned for no apparent reason. "Now wipe those ridiculous tears and get out of my sight. And if you tell your father anything, I will make your life an even worse hell. Do you understand me? Remember that I'm the one in charge here when he's not around." Edward heard Sophia's light footsteps going up the stairs, running away from that cruel woman. His body trembled with rage, with guilt, with a deep pain that seemed to tear his chest apart. How could he have exposed his daughter, the only treasure he had left of his true love, to such cruelty? In that moment, something inside Edward changed forever. The calculating businessman gave way to the wounded father, determined to protect his child at any cost. Silently, he backed out the side door and left the house unnoticed. He needed to think, to plan every step carefully. Claire had shown her true colors, and now Edward knew exactly who he was dealing with. Inside the car, he took several deep breaths before speaking. "Roger, change of plans. Take me to Mr. Cole's office." His trusted lawyer would be his first step. Edward knew the war was just beginning, and he needed every weapon possible to protect Sophia and destroy the woman who had deceived them both so masterfully. As the car cut through the streets, Edward felt his world crumbling. Claire's cruel words echoed in his mind like a nightmare from which he couldn't wake. How had he not seen it before? The signs were all there. Claire's disinterest in the drawings Sophia brought home from school, the headaches that always appeared when it was time to put the girl to bed, the way her smile would vanish when she thought no one was watching. In Mr. Cole's luxurious office, Edward poured out the whole truth, his voice alternating between restrained fury and despair. The lawyer, who had known Edward for over 15 years, listened to everything with a grave expression. "I want a divorce immediately, and I want proof against her." "Everything we can get," Edward declared, his eyes red from holding back tears. "Edward, I understand your pain, but we need to act intelligently. If we confront Claire now, she could deny everything and become even crueler to Sophia when you're not around," the lawyer advised. "We need concrete proof of the psychological abuse." Edward ran his hands over his face, devastated by his helplessness. "I can't leave my daughter another day with that." You won't have to," Mr. Cole assured him. "We'll install discreet cameras in the house, microphones too, all legally justifiable as it concerns the safety of a minor in her own residence." The plan was meticulously laid out. Edward would have to pretend that nothing had changed, to continue his normal routine while the surveillance equipment was secretly installed by the lawyer's trusted team. The hardest part would be looking at Claire without showing the hatred that now boiled in his veins. That night, the dinner with the investors was a test of his acting skills. Claire was stunning in her red dress, charming everyone with her fake sweetness. Edward watched her performance with new eyes, noticing every calculated smile, every strategic touch on his arm, every glance of false adoration. "You two make a perfect couple," one of the investors commented. Raising his champagne glass, Edward forced a smile. "I'm very lucky," he replied, feeling the bitter taste of the lie in his mouth. When they returned to the mansion, Edward made an excuse to stop by Sophia's room. The girl was already asleep, her face still marked by the tears she'd earlier. He sat on the edge of the bed and stroked his daughter's hair, identical to his late wife's. "Forgive me, my love," he whispered. "Daddy is going to fix everything." In the following days, Edward transformed into an Oscar-worthy actor. He left early for work, but in reality, he spent hours at Mr. Cole's office, monitoring the installation of the surveillance equipment and planning every detail of his revenge. At night, he feigned normalcy beside Claire, swallowing his revulsion when she kissed him or hinted at intimacy. A week later, the first pieces of evidence began to emerge. Edward watched, his heart in pieces, the recordings that showed Claire humiliating Sophia when they were alone. "You annoying crybaby," she would say, snatching a drawing from the girl's hands. "Do you really think your father has time for this nonsense? He only pretends to like it because he feels sorry for you." In another recording, Claire was on the phone with a friend. "I can't stand this kid anymore. If it weren't for Edward's fortune, I swear I would have been long gone. But it's worth putting up with the brat for a few years. Once I convince him to put everything in my name, then my life will truly begin." With each new revelation, Edward's anger grew, but so did his determination. It wasn't enough to simply divorce Claire. She had to pay for every tear Sophia had shed, for every nightmare, for every moment of fear his daughter had lived under the same roof as that cruel woman. The plan gained a new element when Edward discovered, through Mr. Cole's investigations, that Claire was having an affair with her personal trainer. Audio recordings captured explicit phone conversations where she not only cheated on Edward but also mocked him, calling him a boring old man and a walking ATM. "We have enough to destroy her in court," the lawyer stated, showing him the folder full of evidence. "With this, she won't get a single penny from you in the divorce." But Edward wanted more than just to get rid of Claire. He wanted her to feel the humiliation she had imposed on his innocent daughter. He wanted her to lose everything, not just the money, but also her reputation, her status, everything she held so dear. "Not yet," Edward replied, his eyes fixed on the images of Sophia cowering in fear before Claire's screams. "And I want her to dig her own grave even deeper." That evening, upon arriving home, Edward found Sophia sitting alone on the stairs, hugging the teddy bear that had been a gift from her biological mother. Her little eyes were red and swollen. "What happened, Princess?" he asked, crouching down to her level. Sophia looked from side to side, as if checking if they were truly alone. "Aunt Claire said she's going to send my bear to the laundry." "But I know she's going to throw him away," the girl whispered. "She said he's old and dirty, just like my memories of Mommy." Something inside Edward exploded at that moment. He hugged his daughter tightly, feeling her small body tremble against his. "That's not going to happen, my love. I promise you, no one is going to take away your memories of Mommy. No one." As he carried Sophia up the stairs, Edward made his final decision. The confrontation with Claire could wait no longer. It was time to put an end to this nightmare, and he knew exactly how to do it. The next morning, Edward called his office to say he wouldn't be coming in. He told Claire he had an important out-of-town meeting and would only be back at night. It was the first of many lies he would tell that day, part of a plan meticulously crafted during a sleepless night. "I'll miss you, darling," Claire said. Adjusting Edward's tie with false dedication, he noticed something that had previously gone unnoticed, the slight tremor of impatience in her fingers, the gaze that never truly met his. "I'll miss you too," he replied, forcing a smile. "Why don't you take the day to do something special with Sophia? Maybe take her to the mall or the park?" Claire's face stiffened for a fraction of a second before she composed herself. "Of course, love. I'll see what I can do. But I have that charity luncheon today, remember?" "Ah, yes, the luncheon," Edward feigned belief. He knew from the recordings that the charity luncheon was actually a rendezvous with her lover at a condo in Soho. Before leaving, Edward stopped by Sophia's room, where she was finishing getting ready for school with Mrs. Gable's help. He hugged his daughter tightly, smelling the soft scent of her hair. "Daddy will be back soon, okay? And I have a surprise for you later." The girl's eyes lit up for the first time in weeks. "What surprise, Daddy?" "If I tell you, it won't be a surprise anymore," he replied, tapping the tip of her nose with his finger. "But I can tell you it's something that will make you very happy." Instead of going to the supposed meeting, Edward drove to Sophia's school. He spoke with the principal, a stern-looking but compassionate woman, and explained the situation. He needed to pick Sophia up early for urgent family reasons. The principal, who had already noticed the change in the girl's behavior in recent months, didn't ask questions. "Mr. Miller, it's none of my business, but Sophia has been different. More withdrawn, less participative in class. If there's anything we can do to help." "You're already helping," Edward assured her, "and I promise that, starting today, Sophia will go back to being the happy girl everyone knows." Meanwhile, at Mr. Cole's office, the final preparations were being made. The private investigator hired by the lawyer confirmed that Claire had just entered the condo where she was meeting her lover. The cameras installed in the mansion showed Mrs. Gable cleaning the house, completely oblivious to the drama that would unfold in a few hours. At noon, Edward picked up Sophia from school. The girl was surprised to see her father, but her eyes lit up with joy. "Daddy, weren't you traveling?" "I changed my plans," he replied, bending down to hug her. "I thought it was more important to spend the day with the most beautiful princess in the world." Edward took Sophia to lunch at her favorite restaurant, then to a movie to see the animated film she had been wanting to see. All the while, he watched his daughter's every reaction, every shy smile, every look of surprise when he said they could order dessert or buy the toy she admired in the shop window. It was as if he were rediscovering his own daughter, realizing how much she had closed herself off under Claire's reign of terror. "Daddy, is Aunt Claire going to be mad if she finds out you brought me here?" Sophia commented at one point, looking around nervously as if her stepmother could appear at any moment. Edward felt his heart ache. "Sophia, I want you to know something very important. No one, absolutely no one in this world, has the right to make you feel bad or scared. Not even Claire." The girl looked down, playing with the straw in her soda. "But she said that if I told you the things she says, you wouldn't believe me. You'd think I was making it up." "I will always believe you, my love. Always." Edward held his daughter's little hands in his. "And I want you to tell me everything. Absolutely everything that happens when I'm not home." At that moment, like a dam breaking, Sophia began to talk. Between sobs and tears, she told him about the daily humiliations, the insults, the threats. How Claire would hide her drawings so Edward wouldn't see them. How she threw away the letters the girl wrote to her deceased mother. How she forbade her from talking about her memories. She said Mommy didn't really love me, that she got sick because she didn't want to take care of me anymore. Sophia whispered, with a pain so deep that Edward felt as if a knife were being twisted in his chest. "That is the most terrible lie anyone could ever invent," he replied, fighting back his own tears. "Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. She fought until her last second to stay with you, with both of us." While comforting his daughter, Edward received messages from Mr. Cole confirming that everything was ready for the final phase of the plan. Claire had left the condo and, according to the tracker installed on her phone, was on her way to the mansion. "Sophia, remember the surprise I promised?" Edward asked, wiping away his daughter's tears. "It's time to go get it." They drove to an ASPCA shelter. Sophia, confused at first, let out a cry of joy when she understood what they were doing there. For months she had been asking for a puppy, something Claire always vetoed, claiming non-existent allergies. "Can I pick anyone, Daddy? Anyone that makes your heart beat faster," he replied, watching his daughter run between the kennels, enchanted by every curious nose that approached the bars. Her choice fell on a caramel-colored mutt with floppy ears and expressive eyes, who licked Sophia's face as soon as she got close. "This one, Daddy, he looks like he's smiling at me." While they took care of the adoption paperwork, Edward received the message he was waiting for. Claire had arrived home and, finding no one there, had started frantically calling his cell phone, which he had deliberately kept off. "It's time to go home, Princess," Edward announced, helping Sophia put the collar on the new family member, whom she had already named Caramel. We have one last, very important thing to do today." On the way back, he explained to his daughter, in simple but direct words, that Claire would no longer be living with them, that sometimes adults make mistakes, and that his biggest mistake was not realizing sooner how badly Claire treated her. "Is she leaving today?" Sophia asked, petting Caramel's ears as he slept in her lap. "Yes, my love. And she will never make you feel sad or scared again." As they pulled into the mansion's driveway, Edward saw Claire's car and, next to it, Mr. Cole's. The time for the reckoning had come. Edward took a deep breath before turning off the engine. He turned to Sophia, who was hugging Caramel with a mixture of joy and apprehension. "Princess, I want you to stay in the car with Caramel for a few minutes. Daddy needs to talk to Aunt Claire first. Okay?" Sophia nodded, her eyes revealing that, even at only 7, she understood the gravity of the situation. "You're going to send her away now." "Right, Daddy." "I am, my love. And after this, It will be just you, me, and Caramel. A real family. Edward got out of the car and asked Roger, his driver, to keep an eye on Sophia. He walked to the mansion's entrance with firm steps, feeling a strange calm. There was no more anger or despair, only the unshakable certainty that he was doing the right thing. As he opened the door, he immediately heard Claire's shrill voice coming from the living room. "Where the hell have you been? I've been calling all afternoon." She stopped abruptly when she saw the expression on her husband's face. Something was different. The submissive, distracted Edward she had manipulated so easily was gone. "Hello, Claire," he said with a calmness that made her take a step back. "How was the charity luncheon?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was great. We raised a lot for the underprivileged children." "Interesting," Edward replied, advancing slowly into the room. "Especially since there was no charity luncheon today. Unless the condo in Soho has been turned into a charity and your personal trainer into a philanthropist." Claire's face went pale. Her eyes darted to the side where Mr. Cole was sitting silently, observing the scene with a grave expression. "What are you talking about? And what is this man doing in our house?" Her voice wavered between indignation and fear. Edward smiled, but it was a cold smile, devoid of any affection. "This is no longer your house, Claire. In fact, it never was." He gestured to the lawyer, who opened a laptop on the coffee table. The screen showed Claire entering the condo earlier that day. In the arms of her lover. "This is an invasion of privacy. You can't—" "I can, and I did," Edward interrupted, "just as I was able to record everything that has happened inside this house for the past few weeks. Every word you said, every threat, every humiliation you inflicted on my daughter." Mr. Cole pressed another button, and the room filled with Claire's voice. "You annoying crybaby. Do you really think your father has time for this nonsense? He only pretends to like it because he feels sorry for you." Claire staggered, leaning against the sofa. Her mask of perfection was beginning to crack, revealing the panic behind the facade. "Edward, that's not— You're taking it out of context. I was just trying to discipline her. That girl is impossible, manipulative." "Enough!" Edward's voice thundered through the room. "Don't you dare speak about my daughter like that. Not after everything you've done." He moved closer, his voice now low and controlled, but filled with an icy fury that made Claire shrink away. "You came into our lives when we were most vulnerable. You took advantage of my pain, my loneliness, my guilt for not being able to be both a father and a mother. You pretended to love Sophia, pretended to want a family, when all you ever wanted was my money." "That's not true," Claire tried to argue. But her voice trembled. "I love you, Edward. I always have." Edward laughed, a bitter sound that seemed to tear the air between them. "Love? You don't know what that is. Love is what I feel for my daughter. It's what I felt for her mother. It's sacrifice. It's protection. It's wanting the other person's happiness above your own. You only love yourself, Claire." He turned to the lawyer, who handed Claire a folder of documents. "What is this?" she asked, not daring to open it. "Your ticket out of our lives," Edward replied. "A divorce settlement. You leave now, taking only what you came with. Not a penny more. No jewelry, no gifts, nothing that was bought with my money during our marriage." Claire finally opened the folder, her eyes widening as she read the terms. "This is absurd. I have a right to half of everything. The law protects spouses who act in good faith," Mr. Cole interrupted, speaking for the first time. "Not con artists who mistreat children and cheat on their husbands. The evidence we have is more than enough to ensure you get nothing from this marriage, besides public shame if you decide to contest it." Edward watched the transformation on Claire's face. Fear gave way to anger, then to cold calculation. She was weighing her options, realizing she was cornered. "And if I don't sign?" she challenged, lifting her chin in a final act of defiance. "Then," Edward replied calmly, All these recordings will be handed over not just to the judge, but also to the press. Your name and face will be in every tabloid and gossip show you adore so much. The cruel socialite who mistreated a motherless child. I imagine your jet-set friends will love that story. The blow landed perfectly. If there was one thing Claire prized as much as money, it was her public image. The idea of being exposed as the villain in a story where the victim was an innocent child was unbearable to her. With trembling hands, she took the pen the lawyer offered and signed the documents, a tear of rage running down her perfectly made-up face. "You'll regret this, Edward," she hissed. "No one humiliates me like this and gets away with it." Edward didn't reply. Instead, he walked to the window and signaled to Roger. Moments later, the front door opened and Sophia entered timidly, holding Caramel in her arms. Claire's face contorted into a mask of hatred at the sight of the dog. "What is that thing doing in my house? You know I'm allergic." "Liar," Sophia replied, her voice small but firm. "You told your friend Marcia on the phone that you made that up just so I couldn't have a puppy." Claire took a step towards the girl, but Edward immediately placed himself between them. "But not one more step," he warned, his voice laced with threat. "You have exactly 1 hour to pack your personal belongings and leave. Whatever you don't take will be donated. My jewelry, my designer dresses, my shoes, all bought with my money. It all stays." Claire looked around like a cornered animal seeking an escape. Finally, defeated, she went up the stairs towards the bedroom, followed closely by an assistant from Mr. Cole's office, who would ensure she took nothing more than what was permitted. Edward knelt in front of Sophia, who watched everything with wide eyes, hugging Caramel as if he were a protective shield. "It's over, Princess. She will never hurt you again." Sophia looked up at the top of the stairs, where Claire had disappeared, then back at her father. "Promise, Daddy." "I promise with all my heart." Edward hugged his daughter and the puppy, feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "From now on, it's just the three of us, and I will spend every day of my life making it up to you for not realizing what was happening sooner." An hour later, Claire came down the stairs dragging a single suitcase. Her face was stained with angry tears, but there was something else in her eyes, the recognition that she had lost everything because of her own cruelty and greed. She stopped in front of Edward and Sophia, who were sitting on the couch, playing with Caramel as if she no longer existed. "This isn't over," she threatened in a last-ditch effort to intimidate them. Edward didn't even look up. "Yes, it is, Claire. You don't exist to us anymore." When the front door closed behind her, Sophia looked at her father with an expression that mixed relief and uncertainty. "What now, Daddy? What's going to happen?" Edward smiled, a genuine smile for the first time in a long time. "Now, my love, we're going to learn how to be happy again." In the weeks that followed Claire's departure, the Miller mansion underwent a transformation, not just on the walls, which Edward had repainted in vibrant colors chosen by Sophia, but mainly in the atmosphere. The oppressive silence that had hung over the house gave way to laughter, music, and the sound of Caramel's paws pattering down the hallways. Edward completely reorganized his professional life. He delegated responsibilities, reduced his working hours, and began working from home whenever possible. Every minute away from Sophia now felt like a wasted minute, a lost opportunity to rebuild the bond that had been damaged during Claire's reign of terror. "Daddy, look what Caramel and I made," Sophia exclaimed one afternoon, pulling Edward by the hand to the garden, where she had set up a small tent with sheets and pillows. "It's our secret base. Only people we allow can come in." Edward crouched to get through the makeshift door, pretending to have great difficulty fitting into the space. Sophia laughed so hard she could barely breathe, and that sound was like music to his ears. "And who can enter the secret base?" he asked, settling in among the colorful pillows. Sophia put on a serious expression, as if considering a matter of extreme importance. "Me, you, Caramel, Mrs. Gable when she brings snacks, and Mommy, If she wants to visit from heaven. Edward felt a lump in his throat. It was the first time in a long time that Sophia had mentioned her mother spontaneously, without fear or sadness. "I'm sure she loves to visit," he replied, pulling his daughter into a hug. "And I bet she's very proud of the secret base you built." That night, as he was putting Sophia to bed, the girl asked for something she hadn't asked for in months. "Daddy, can you tell me a story about Mommy?" Edward sat on the edge of the bed, with Caramel curled up at Sophia's feet, and began to narrate the memories Claire had tried to erase. He talked about how he met Marianne in college, how brilliant and determined she was, how her smile lit up any room. He told her about the day Sophia was born, how Marianne cried with joy holding her daughter for the first time. "Your mother used to say that you were her greatest miracle," Edward said, stroking his daughter's hair. "Even when she got sick, she never stopped smiling for you, planning your future, filling albums with your pictures, and writing letters for you to read when you grew up." Sophia's eyes widened. "Letters? What letters, Daddy?" Edward hesitated. The letters Marianne had written during her illness were stored in a box in his bedroom closet, a closet that was later taken over by Claire's clothes and shoes. He hadn't seen them in so long. He wasn't even sure if they were still there. "We'll look for them tomorrow, okay? Now it's time to sleep." But Sophia was already wide awake, her eyes shining with anticipation. "Please, Daddy, I want to see Mommy's letters now." How could he deny that request? Edward stood up and extended his hand to his daughter. "Let's go, then. But just one letter today. Deal? The others are for tomorrow." Together, they went to the master bedroom. Edward opened the closet, now almost empty since Claire's departure, and reached for the top shelf. There it was, the carved wooden box Marianne had chosen specifically to store her letters. They sat on the bed, and Edward opened the box with reverent care. Inside, dozens of envelopes organized by date, each with Sophia's name written in Marianne's delicate handwriting. "Your mother wrote a letter for each of your birthdays until you turned 21, Edward explained, his voice thick with emotion. "She wanted to be present for every important moment in your life, even if she couldn't be there physically." Sophia touched the envelopes with trembling fingers, as if they were sacred relics. "And can I open the one for my next birthday?" Edward nodded, helping her find the envelope marked Sophia, 8 years. The girl opened it carefully and unfolded the scented paper. "Read it to me, Daddy. I want to hear it in your voice." Edward took a deep breath and began to read. "My dearest Sophia, today you turn 8. I imagine you must be so beautiful and clever. You probably read better than I do by now, but Daddy is reading this letter to you, isn't he? He always had the most beautiful voice in the world for telling stories. I wish so much I could be there to see your smile, to make that chocolate cake with strawberries that you loved so much when you were little. But even though I'm not there physically, know that my love is always with you, protecting you, guiding you, hugging you in difficult times. When I was 8, I discovered my passion for drawing. Do you like it too? Or maybe you prefer music or dancing, or building things. Whatever your passion is, follow it with all your heart. Life is too short not to do what we love. Always remember, you are strong, Sophia. Stronger than you imagine. You have a little bit of me and a little bit of your father inside you. And the two of us together are invincible, aren't we? I love you infinitely, to the stars and beyond, Mommy." When Edward finished reading, he realized that both he and Sophia were crying silently. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of healing, of reconnecting with a part of themselves that had been silenced for too long. "She really did love me, didn't she, Daddy?" Sophia asked, hugging the letter to her chest. "More than anything in this world," Edward replied, "and that love will never go away. It's inside you, forever." That night, Sophia slept with the letter under her pillow, and for the first time in months, she had no nightmares. Edward watched her sleep for a long time, marveling at the resilience of this little person who had endured so much. The next morning, as they had breakfast on the sunny porch, with Caramel running around the garden, Sophia asked a question that caught Edward by surprise. "Daddy, can we visit Mommy's grave today? I want to tell her that we're okay now." Edward felt his heart swell with love and pride. "Of course we can, Princess. We'll bring her some beautiful flowers." At the cemetery, Sophia carefully placed a bouquet of sunflowers, Marianne's favorite flowers, on the marble headstone. Then, to Edward's surprise, the girl began to speak naturally, as if she were talking to someone who could see and hear her. "Hi, Mommy, I'm sorry I haven't been here sooner. Aunt Claire wouldn't let Daddy bring me. She was really mean to me, you know, but Daddy found out everything and sent her away. Now it's just me, him, and Caramel. Oh, Caramel is my puppy. You would love him, Mommy. He licks my face when I'm sad and sleeps on my bed every night." Edward watched in silence, silent tears streaming down his face, as Sophia continued her innocent and profound monologue. "Yesterday, Daddy showed me your letters. I read the one for my 8th birthday. It was the best present ever. I'm going to keep it forever. And you know what? I like to draw too, just like you did. Daddy said I can take art classes now. He also said we're going to travel on vacation to all the places you wanted to see. That way you can come with us. In our hearts." Sophia paused, running her little fingers over Marianne's name engraved on the stone. "I miss you every day, Mommy, but Daddy said you're always with me, even if I can't see you. Is that true? Are you here right now, listening to everything I'm saying?" A gentle breeze stirred Sophia's hair at that moment, making the sunflower petals dance on the grave. The girl smiled, as if she had received her answer. "I knew it," she whispered. "I always knew." Hand in hand, father and daughter left the cemetery with a sense of peace they hadn't felt in a long time. On the way home, Sophia rested her head on Edward's arm and said, with the wisdom that sometimes only children possess, "Daddy, I think Mommy sent Claire away. She was protecting us from heaven." Edward smiled, wiping away a stubborn tear. "You know what, Princess? I think you're right." That night, as Sophia slept peacefully with Caramel curled at her feet, Edward sat on the porch, contemplating the stars. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel the crushing weight of guilt and loneliness. In its place, there was gratitude, for having realized in time the poison that Claire represented, for having the chance to rebuild his relationship with Sophia, for all the memories of Marianne that they could now celebrate openly. "Thank you," he whispered to the starry sky, "for not giving up on us." And somewhere, among the stars that Sophia believed were windows to heaven, perhaps Marianne was smiling, knowing that her family had finally found their way back to the light. 3 months had passed since Claire's departure. Life in the Miller mansion had found a new rhythm, lighter and more authentic. Edward had drastically reduced his work hours, delegating responsibilities and refusing long trips. Sophia blossomed with each passing day, regaining the confidence and joy that had been stifled under Claire's regime. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, while Sophia played with Caramel in the garden, Edward received an unexpected call. "Mr. Miller, this is Deborah Allen from Sophia's school." Edward frowned. Deborah was the school psychologist, with whom he had spoken briefly after Claire left. "Is there a problem with Sophia?" he asked, immediately concerned. "On the contrary," Deborah replied in a warm voice. "I'm calling to share something wonderful. Sophia presented a project in her art class that moved all of us. She created an illustrated book called The Princess and the Monster in Disguise. It's clearly inspired by her experience with her stepmother, but what impressed us was the maturity with which she transformed that pain into art." Edward felt his heart clench. "She didn't tell me about this project. She wanted to surprise you. Actually, I'm calling to invite you to come to the school on Monday. We'd like to display Sophia's work at our cultural fair, but we need your permission, considering the sensitive theme." "Of course. I'll be there," Edward replied, intrigued and proud at the same time. When he hung up, he watched Sophia run across the lawn, chasing Caramel with a ball. It was hard to believe that this laughing child was the same one who, months ago, would shrink in fear at the sound of Claire's footsteps. On Monday, Edward arrived at the school, eager to see Sophia's project. The psychologist greeted him with a warm smile and led him to the art room, where the book was displayed on a table. Sophia is in class right now. I thought you might want to see the work first, before we talk to her. Edward nodded, approaching the handmade book. The cover, made of coloured cardstock, showed a drawing of a castle, a girl with a crown, and, hidden in the shadows, a figure with a beautiful face but claws for hands. The title, written in Sophia's neat handwriting, read, "The Princess and the Monster in Disguise." With trembling hands, Edward began to flip through the book. The story, told in simple sentences and illustrated with surprisingly expressive drawings for a 7-year-old, told the journey of a princess who lived happily with her father, the king, until the queen died. The king, sad and lonely, ended up marrying a beautiful woman who, when no one was looking, turned into a monster that tormented the princess. What impressed Edward most, however, was the end of the story. Instead of ending with the king banishing the evil stepmother from the castle, as had happened in real life, Sophia created a different outcome. The princess, tired of suffering in silence, found the courage to tell her father about the disguised monster. The king, who had never noticed the truth, was devastated to discover his daughter's suffering. Together, father and daughter used the power of true love to break the spell, revealing that the stepmother was, in fact, a sad and empty woman who had never known real love. The last page showed the king, the princess, and their puppy living happily in the castle, while the ex-stepmother left to learn how to truly love before she could return. Edward closed the book, feeling a lump in his throat. Sophia had not created a story of revenge, but of redemption and healing. At 7 years old, she showed an understanding of human nature that many adults never achieve. "It's extraordinary, isn't it?" commented Deborah, who was watching his reactions. Sophia processed a deep trauma through art and reached a conclusion that many of us therapists work for years to help our patients achieve, that often those who hurt us are, in fact, deeply hurt themselves. Edward nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "She's incredible," he finally managed to say, "much stronger and wiser than I ever was." "Children have surprising resilience when they receive the right support," Deborah replied, "and Sophia clearly has that now. What you've done in recent months, creating a safe environment, validating her feelings, reconnecting with her mother's memories, was exactly what she needed to process this experience in a healthy way." At that moment, the classroom door opened and Sophia walked in, stopping in surprise when she saw her father. "Daddy! You saw my book?" she asked, running to hug him. Edward lifted her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "I did, Princess. It's the most incredible book I've ever read in my life." Sophia smiled, proud. "The teacher said I can be a writer when I grow up, or an illustrator. Or both. You can be absolutely anything you want to be," Edward replied, kissing her forehead. Later that day, as they were driving home, Sophia asked shyly, "Were you sad about the end of my story, Daddy, because the stepmother wasn't sent to jail like Claire?" Edward reflected for a moment before answering, "I wasn't sad, I was impressed. You understood something that took me a long time to understand. That people like Claire do bad things because there's something broken inside them. That doesn't justify what she did, but it explains it." Sophia nodded, thoughtful. "Do you think she'll learn to love for real one day, like in my story?" "I don't know, Princess. Some people never learn, but the important thing is that we learned something from this experience, right?" "Yes," Sophia exclaimed, excited. We learned that we have to speak up when something is wrong, and that true love is stronger than any monster." Edward smiled, amazed by the wisdom of this little person he had the honor of calling his daughter. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, Edward sat in his study with a glass of wine, reflecting on the past few months. The pain of Claire's betrayal was still there, as was the guilt for not having noticed Sophia's suffering sooner. But now those emotions shared space with something more powerful: pride in his daughter's strength and resilience, and gratitude for the second chance they had been given. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Mr. Cole. "Edward, I have news about Claire," the lawyer said without preamble. "She's trying to sell her story to a tabloid magazine. She wants to portray herself as the victim, claiming you threw her out of the house unfairly and left her destitute." Edward sighed, not entirely surprised. "And the non-disclosure agreement she signed? That's exactly why I'm calling. If she goes through with this, we can sue her for breach of contract. Plus, we have all the evidence to debunk any story she invents." Edward was silent for a moment, thinking of Sophia's book, of the stepmother who left to learn how to truly love. "Let her," he said finally. "If the magazine publishes anything, our press officer will issue a simple statement saying we do not comment on private family matters. Nothing more." "Are you sure?" the lawyer asked, surprised. "We could completely destroy her credibility." "I'm sure. I don't want to drag Sophia into a public war. Besides," Edward hesitated, searching for the right words, "Claire has already lost everything that truly matters. Anything we do now would just be unnecessary cruelty." After hanging up, Edward walked to Sophia's room. The girl was sleeping peacefully, with caramel curled at her feet. On the nightstand, the book she had created rested beside the box with Marianne's letters. Edward adjusted the blanket over his daughter and gently kissed her forehead. "You teach me every day, you know that," he whispered, "to be stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Thank you for that, my love." As he left the room, Edward felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would still be difficult days, painful questions, moments of longing and uncertainty. But now he knew that together, he and Sophia could face any challenge. The monster in disguise was gone, and in its place was a precious lesson about human fragility and the transformative power of true love. A lesson that, ironically, came through the innocent eyes of a 7-year-old who, despite having faced the darkness, chose to believe in the light. And you, what would you do in Edward's place? Would you have confronted Claire in the same way or chosen a different path? Do you think Sophia did the right thing by creating a more compassionate ending in her story? Or should justice be harsher with people like Claire? Let me know in the comments what you think about this story of betrayal, redemption, and the power of true love. 6 months had passed since Claire's departure. Spring had arrived, bringing new colors to the garden of the Miller mansion, as well as new chapters in the lives of Edward and Sophia. The little girl, who had turned 8 with a simple but joyous party, was flourishing like the roses she had helped plant in the renewed flower beds. That Saturday morning, Edward watched Sophia play with Caramel in the garden while he drank his coffee. The dog, no longer a puppy, had become inseparable from the girl, like a furry guardian always attentive to her movements. "Daddy, look what Caramel learned," Sophia shouted, waving excitedly. The dog sat, raised its right paw, and then rolled over on the grass, making Sophia burst into laughter. Edward smiled, marveling at his daughter's transformation. The eyes that once carried shadows of fear now shone with confidence and joy. The sessions with the child psychologist, which Edward had insisted on continuing even after Sophia's visible improvement, had helped the girl process her experiences and turn them into learning. His phone vibrated, interrupting his thoughts. It was a message from Louisa, Sophia's art teacher, with whom Edward had been talking frequently in recent weeks. Don't forget the exhibition today at 3 p.m. Sophia is so excited. I saved front row seats for you. Kisses, Lou. Edward smiled as he read the message. Louisa had entered their lives almost by chance when Sophia started attending the art studio after her interest was sparked by her illustrated book. The teacher, a woman in her early 30s with curly hair, always tied in a messy bun and hands constantly stained with paint, had won Sophia over immediately with her gentle and encouraging approach. What Edward hadn't expected was that he himself would be won over too. Not in a romantic way. It was still too soon for that. The wounds left by Claire were still healing. But Louisa had brought a genuine friendship into his life. Something he hadn't realized was missing until he experienced it again. "Sophia, time to get ready," Edward called, checking his watch. "We have Louisa's exhibition today, remember?" The girl ran towards the house with Caramel at her heels. "Can I wear my blue dress, Daddy? The one Grandma gave me?" "Of course you can, Princess." Edward's mother, who had kept her distance during his marriage to Claire due to disagreements with her daughter-in-law, was now a constant presence in their lives again. The reconciliation had been another important step in rebuilding their family. While Sophia got ready with Mrs. Gable's help, Edward checked his email. Among the work messages, one in particular caught his eye. The sender was Mr. Cole. "Edward, as requested, here is the report on Claire. After her failed attempt to sell her story to the press, no magazine wanted to risk a lawsuit. She left the state. According to our sources, she's living in Florida with her sister. Apparently, she's working as a sales associate in a department store. No suspicious activity or attempts to contact have been detected. We will continue to monitor discreetly. As agreed. Best, Cole." Edward reread the message several times, feeling a strange mix of emotions. He hadn't requested this report out of fear or paranoia. He knew Claire no longer posed a real threat. It had been more of a need for closure to know that this chapter was definitively closed. A sales associate in a department store. The irony did not escape him. The woman who despised any common job, who boasted of never having had to work thanks to her beauty, was now experiencing the life she so disdained. For a brief moment, Edward felt a pang of vengeful satisfaction, but it soon gave way to something closer to pity. Not because Claire had lost the luxury and status, that was just a consequence of her own choices, but because she had never understood that true wealth lay in genuine connections, in true love, in the ability to care for someone other than herself. "Daddy, I'm ready," Sophia announced, twirling to show off her sky-blue dress. Her hair, once always tied in severe braids at Claire's insistence, now fell in loose curls, framing her smiling face. "You look beautiful." "Princess," Edward replied, closing the email without responding. The past could stay in the past. The present and the future were right there, in front of him, wearing a blue dress and a smile worth more than all the fortunes in the world. The art exhibition was being held in a gallery in the Chelsea neighborhood. Louisa, who in addition to teaching children was a respected artist in the alternative circuit, was presenting her new collection of paintings, inspired by reinterpreted children's stories. "Edward, Sophia, I'm so glad you came," Louisa exclaimed upon seeing them enter. She was wearing a paint-stained linen jumpsuit and seemed both nervous and happy. "Come, I want to show you something special before the exhibition officially opens." She led them to a separate room, where a single painting was covered by a cloth. "Sophia, remember that day you showed me your book, The Princess and the Monster in Disguise?" Louisa asked, crouching to be at the girl's level. "I was so touched by your story that I asked your father's permission to create something inspired by it." With a smooth movement, Louisa removed the cloth, revealing a large, luminous canvas. The painting showed a girl and a man holding hands, walking along a path that led out of the shadows and into the light. Behind them, almost imperceptible in the darkness, was the outline of a female figure, not threatening, just sad and distant. Next to the girl, a golden dog ran happily, and above them all, in the sky painted in shades of blue and gold, an ethereal woman seemed to watch over them with a protective smile. "It's called Beyond the Shadows," Louisa explained. "It's my interpretation of your ending, Sophia. How sometimes we have to go through the dark to find an even brighter light." Sophia was silent, her wide eyes fixed on the painting. For a terrible moment, Edward feared the image had awakened painful memories. But then the girl turned to Louisa with teary eyes and a radiant smile. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Sophia declared with the absolute sincerity only children possess. "You painted Mommy watching over us from heaven." Louisa nodded, visibly moved. "Your father told me about her. I hope you don't mind." "It's perfect," Edward replied, his own voice thick with emotion. "Marianne would have loved it." The exhibition was a success, with the painting inspired by Sophia's story receiving special attention from the critics present. Later, while Sophia chatted animatedly with other guests about her own artistic creations, Louisa approached Edward with 2 glasses of wine. "Thank you for allowing me to use your story," she said, handing him one of the glasses. "It was one of the most meaningful paintings I've ever created." Edward smiled, watching Sophia from a distance. "We should be thanking you. You have no idea how much your classes have helped Sophia. Art has become a way for her to process everything that happened." Louisa nodded, following his gaze. "Children are incredibly resilient when they have the right support. And Sophia has the best father a girl could wish for." "I made a lot of mistakes," Edward admitted, thinking of how blind he had been to Claire's manipulations, how long it took him to notice his daughter's suffering. "We all do," Louisa replied kindly. "The important thing is to learn from them and move on." "That's what you did." There was something in the way she said it, without judgment, without romanticizing. Just an honest observation that touched Edward deeply. Louisa was not like Claire, who used words as weapons or tools of manipulation. She spoke with the same authenticity with which she painted, taught, and lived. "Would you like to have dinner with us sometime?" Edward asked impulsively. "Sophia would love it, and I would too." Louisa smiled, a smile that lit up her brown eyes. "I'd love to, but on one condition: I cook." "I heard you're a disaster in the kitchen," Edward laughed, feeling light in a way he hadn't experienced in years. "Who told you?" "It was Sophia, wasn't it? That traitor." The rest of the afternoon passed in a pleasant blur of conversation, laughter, and plans for the future. When they finally got home, Sophia was so exhausted she fell asleep in the car. Edward carried her to bed, carefully changed her clothes so as not to wake her, and tucked her in. Caramel, faithful as always, jumped onto the bed and settled at the girl's feet. "Good night, my loves," Edward whispered, kissing his daughter's forehead. Before leaving the room, he paused to look at the photographs on the bulletin board Sophia had created above her bed. There were old photos of Marianne, recent photos of Sophia with Caramel, with her grandparents, with her school friends. And now, in the center of the board, Sophia had placed a small card from Louisa's exhibition with a miniature of the painting Beyond the Shadows. Edward smiled, feeling a deep peace spread through his chest. The path had been difficult, with unexpected turns and painful obstacles. But now, finally, he could see the horizon clearly, and it was brighter and more promising than he had ever imagined. Outside, the stars shone in the São Paulo night sky, as if Marianne were truly watching over them, guiding them to this new phase of healing and new beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, Edward felt they were exactly where they were supposed to be, not just surviving, but truly living, loving, and growing. Beyond the shadows, the light always waits. You just have to have the courage to move forward. And you? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to start over from scratch? Do you believe it's possible to find light after periods of darkness? What did you think of the outcome of Edward and Sophia's story? Share your impressions in the comments and let me know if this story touched your heart in any way.